Let's jump to this story. We got this from Timcast.com. Indiana legislature overrides governor's veto to enact transgender sports regulations. The ACLU has already challenged the bill in court, citing Title IX. Legislators in Indiana enacted a bill requiring students to compete on sports teams that correlate with their biological sex. Minutes later, the ACLU filed a lawsuit, arguing the bill is a form of gender-based discrimination that violates Title IX. And I'll just say, I think the ACLU is right. I don't think they're right culturally. I think they're right legally. And that's something I've long talked about. You can't have gender segregation under the 1964 Civil Rights Act, under Title IX. So the arguments that were made for ending racial segregation make sense. The arguments for ending gender segregation don't make sense, but there's a legal precedent that doesn't care about the distinction. So this is what's happening in schools now. So basically this bill is trying to say, like, look, I'm going to put it this way for everybody who's not familiar with what's going on or who maybe doesn't understand. There is a female pro skateboarder, came out as trans, kept competing against females. Then you get male skateboarders who say that they're actually women, and then they compete against females. It only flows in one direction. This is a big part of the problem. This is what these bills are trying to address. If we need to create a new league, a new division for trans athletes, then sure, maybe that's a solution. But just eliminating the women's division makes no sense. Now, the ACLU is arguing you can't have gender segregation. I think the issue is the law says that.
I'm trying to understand exactly what the ACLU is saying, because, I mean, the ACLU are the people who tweet out the men have periods.
Right. They're basically nuts, right?
Yeah, they're nuts.
But so here's the issue. From a legal standpoint, I think they have a correct argument. Legally correct, but not like an actually... What's the right way to say it?
Justifiable?
Right. Justifiably,
Morally,
like
ethical.
Morally or ethical. Yeah, it's a better way to put it. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, you can't discriminate against a person in public accommodation based on national origin, sex, gender, blah, 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 whatever, race. So from that, we were like, okay, no more, white restroom and black restroom. It's all going to be the same. Mm-hmm. But even though the 1964 Civil Rights Act includes gender, we never ended gender segregation for obvious reasons. Men and women are different. And
okay, so on the precedent side, you are saying that it is correct because of the Civil Rights Act and how it was enacted.
I think people need to understand that that these laws are not that when we try to create a logical formula
right.
for a cultural problem that is nuanced and is experienced in a gradient way, you will have issues like this.
Right. So we're basically saying that we do actually need laws that segregate women from men in terms of these types of things, whether
Perhaps.
It comes to sports or
Yep.
any of these. Is that a hot take? I don't know. I mean, that feels pretty natural to say.
Yeah.
Well, so we had I think it was Delano Squires who was on. We were talking about this, and he was like, you can travel all over the world and see the differences between men and women are like uniform.
Right.
Differences between different groups of people in different areas, are different as well. So the issue with race is that it's not a good reason to segregate somebody. Like you say this guy's white and this guy's black. Well, one dude is Italian and 5'5", and one guy's, Swedish and 6'5". I mean, race is not the issue right now. So for like MMA, we do weight categories and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
For segregating based on race for a bathroom, that makes no sense. But gender, experienced all over the world by every single human being, 99.8% of the time is the same. There's a reason why we separate. There's a variety of cultural reasons and then actual physical reasons. But the 1964 Civil Rights Act doesn't include any of that. So this would have to be addressed. One of the issues at play is that they have they allow segregation at certain universities for gender segregation. When it's like a woman in computers program. There was a lawsuit. It was something like this. Some guy sued saying you can't have a woman in computers program because that is discriminatory against males. The school said we have a men in computer program. And the courts ruled that so long as they offer the same opportunities to both, it's not actually discriminatory. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wouldn't that precedent apply to national origin, religion, or race as well? Mm-hmm. That was what we got rid of when we ended segregation. So how is it different when it comes to gender under the same law?
Right. I'm a lawyer, right? And what I find interesting about these types of conversations is that it shows very clearly that the law doesn't have an answer for everything. These types of laws, obviously with, the subject of transgenderism, when these laws were written down, that wasn't an issue. So it poses all of these new new problems that now the law has to respond to, needs to answer to, and it doesn't know how to. And I think with something like this, the way that we've always dealt with that was morality. So you have certain norms in society that dictate, okay, well, obviously, in this case, we find the segregation or the differentiation of certain groups justified because that's just the way it is. There is no better argument really for it, or that's the way it should be, because we have a shared idea of what is right and what is wrong in society, and therefore, that problem kind of solves itself. But now we're looking to these problems and we're saying, oh, we need to create laws around it. And often you just make more of a mess around of it.
I think we probably need to codify that we can segregate on the basis of sex.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about
when I'm saying gender, I'm literally talking about biological sex.
Gender and sex. But it's the civil rights laws are about gender. They're talking about gender. Do they mention
1964,
sex?
it says sex. I'm using gender the classical way
Right.
to refer to the biological
Sex,
differences between men
Right.
and women.
The obvious way.
So you want to discriminate insofar as you don't want to put a naked woman around a bunch of naked men that are
course.
in heat.
Yes.
Right.
In heat?
Yeah, that's a family-friendly, nice way of
dogs.
putting it.
Yeah.
So discrimination is massively important. If you can't make a discrimination, if you can't discriminate against a guy running at you with a knife and a guy standing on a corner not looking at you, you're gonna die. So you need to discriminate.
I'm not going to pretend I'll have all the answers. I'm just going to say that culture is everything. When we enshrined the 1964 Civil Rights Act, I think we did some tremendous good. Ending segregation was right. Segregation was wrong. And why didn't we end sex segregation? Why were we like, okay, now there can't be different restaurants for different races, but you can still separate schools and public accommodations for different, you can have ladies' night, you do all these things, because culturally everybody was okay with it. So there was no need to change it. Now we have the rise of this woke cult, and they're exploiting this law and our culture for not addressing these things. I think the real intent is just to destroy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Confuse. Just,
Right.
Yeah.
Demoralize.
Yeah. Constantly confuse
As
people.
Yuri Bezmenov says.
Yes. Well, you talked about on Twitter, was it today or the other day, about a civil war in this country. I mean, it feels to me like we're at a place when I was growing up versus now. We are at a place where there is no coming back for some of these people on the left. That some of these ideas that have spawned out of their mouths that they write about and they talk about are so radical and so different from anything that has ever been talked about in human history that I don't see a way that we come back. I mean, we're already in a civil war of ideas in this country, civil war of ideas in the West. I hope that it doesn't get violent, but it seems like we're headed towards some sort of national divorce. You have people who are fine with butchering, savagely killing babies after they are born and calling it helping the woman. I'm supposed to live in a society with people like that? It doesn't...
The conversation on abortion keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Some news outlet, I don't know, wrote an article saying that I was a conservative who was obsessed with late-term abortion, which never happens, simply because I said, "Hey, look, Democrats are trying to pass late-term abortion legislation. Why? You're obsessed with it. It never happens, Tim. Why are you talking about it?" I'm like, I'm talking about it because you just tried to legalize it. I don't understand. Like, you said, we're going to legalize this. I said, why? I'm not obsessed. I'm asking you why you did this thing.
This is their little trick, right? They do that all the time with these types of things. They say, oh, never happens. But then when it happens, it's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just...
That's the
I
same
mean,
with the
maybe-
demographic changes. The what's it called? The
right.
Great Replacement.
Replacement
theory. Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
happen, but when it happens, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
well, that's the crazy thing, too, when they're talking about Tucker Carlson. All of these Democrats talk about immigration as a means of maintaining political power. Then Tucker Carlson gets angry about it, and they're like, he's pushing conspiracy theories. It's like, what? They do it to Trump all the time, or they would. Trump would read the news, and then he'd be like, you see this thing that's going on? It's a very interesting medicine. And then the media would be like, Trump makes up medical misinformation. He's dangerous. And it's like, I read that in TechCrunch.
Yeah.
Trump, watches the news, repeats it, and they call him a liar.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. When PolitiFact...
It's that easy.
When he mentioned inner city unemployment, and they said it was mostly false, but it was like a verbatim quote from Bernie Sanders, which was mostly true. Incredible how they do this.
I mean, that's those man on the street. I've done a lot of man on the street videos with PragerU. Check them all out. But where you go and tell someone, you say, "Hey, this is what the Republicans or the conservatives are saying," and then it turns out that that was actually the left. Yeah, that was actually the left. That was actually the Democrats. I mean, we did one about the history of the Democrat Party. I did on Hollywood Boulevard a couple of years ago, going and asking people and saying, who started the KKK, all these things. They all think it's Republicans when it's really Democrats. I mean, you can quote these people verbatim, and they will still tell you that you're a liar and that everything you say is untrue.
You know,
that's their strategy.
Michael Malice had a good tweet. He said, "I'll start believing that you care about kids' lives when you care about the ones that Joe Biden took," or something to that effect. And I don't remember the exact quote from Michael, but I'll put it this way: I'll believe that any of these people care about kids' lives when they have a national news cycle condemning Barack Obama for the children he killed, including the American citizens, but namely Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old American citizen that Obama killed.
Right.
Where was the big news cycle? In fact, when Luke Rudkowski was at, I think it was the 2012 DNC. I think it was the DNC, and he and another reporter for We Are Change asked these personalities about the drone assassination of Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, an American 16-year-old. Someone, I think it was Charlie Gibbs, I'm not sure, said he should have had a better father. Oof. They don't care. They don't care about who they blow up or kill. They're using political wedge issues. And that's why they never offer any real solutions to any of these problems. That's why they're like background checks. It's like, dude, we already have those.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right. There is no gun show loophole. I mean, all this.
Yeah, it's nonsense. It's the weirdest thing. Like every time I go to buy a gun, I got to fill out my little background check form. I think the only thing I can do is if I want to steel man their argument is that they're talking about like in West Virginia, you can sell a weapon to a family member. Or a private sale. You're still legally responsible for that. You'll go to prison if this person isn't legally allowed to have it.
Yep.
So if they've done drugs, if they're depressed, like you can get in trouble for it. We have those laws. But they're like common sense gun reform. I'm like, what does that mean?
Well, if it's
they're not saying anything.
If it's a white person, then it's white supremacy's fault as a shooter. If it's anyone else of any other race, it's gun control. All these things is a tool that the left can use to bludgeon their opponents. I mean, all of these things. They don't care about any of it. It's just a tool to get their way. It's
just crazy that you see that dude in Waukesha. Mm-hmm. He rams this parade. He's got black nationalist stuff on his Facebook, and they're like, nah, it's not political.
No.
It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, someone the other night mentioned that although these, I don't know if you call them psychopaths or this aberration of American society are using leftist tactics, it's not actually the American left. The American left and right are still relatively sane and somewhere towards the center, but you've got this weird, like, pseudo-communist, fascist, probably psychoactively dampened group of people that are ripping themselves apart and screaming and busting stuff up.
I wonder about this. I wonder about the medication rates among conservatives versus liberals.
I'm sure you can find it.
There was a poll I was reading that said liberals are more likely to experience mental illness. Have you ever seen this one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, the left argued that it's not that they have more mental illness, it's that Republicans don't go to the doctor. And I'm like,
I don't need to go to the doctor. I'm all good.
Or it's like, I'm a big, strong man. I don't need to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
But that data doesn't show that. You can speculate all you want. I don't see that in the data. All I know is the data says liberals, the left, are more likely, the further you go left, the more mental illness they have.
The more deep in the city you live, the more mentally ill you may become. That's what happened to me. I mean, you're in LA right now. Are you guys noticing? Have you noticed like your own mind in that city getting broken or weakened or what?
I mean, I stay away from a lot of the city stuff. I live I live out in Burbank, if people are familiar again with LA. No, it's kind of outside of LA, outside the city, outside of Hollywood. So I try to keep to myself. And my dog, we kind of hang out a lot. Mm. So, but I know a lot of people who live in that city. And before, when I first moved to LA and did a lot of stuff in Hollywood, did a lot of stuff in Beverly Hills, all that kind of stuff, it was destroying my mind.
Yeah, the brake dust. A lot of it's the brake dust off the car pads, the brake pads. Mm-hmm. It's more fine than carbon. I think more fine than carbon dioxide. Maybe not carbon dioxide, but more fine than like soot. And it goes through the alveoli in your lungs right into the bloodstream and makes just massive hypertension and depression.
Let's not forget all the fluoride in the water.
That's right.
Do you guys have fluoride?
I taste that. No. The first time I came here, first time I drank a glass of water, which is 6 days ago, because this is my first time in the U.S. The first thing I said to him is, "Does this taste like pool? Like a pool?"
Well, it's got that's the chlorine probably.
Yeah. Well, but it tastes completely different. Wow. Yeah. No, our water is very filtered. Yeah. But
no fluoride in your water. Are you sure?
Go check it out. Dutch Waters, I swear. It's very filtered. It's filtered to death.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.